Late one summer night, in a quiet corner of Fremont, California, the golden arches of a 24-hour McDonald's glowed under the hum of fluorescent lights. Inside, Marissa Lopez wiped down the counter for the 100th time that day. Her lower back ached. Her feet burned. She glanced at the clock. Only 30 minutes to go. Then it would be the bus ride home, a quiet apartment, and two sleeping children she hadn't seen all day. Their pictures were taped inside her locker. Zoe, age 9, with her gap-toothed smile, and Miguel, age 7, serious behind his oversized glasses. Everything she did for them. This shift, like so many others, was long, loud, and thankless. Orders blurred together. Smiles had to stay fixed. And no matter how tired she got, there was no room for slowing down. Rent was due in 5 days. Miguel's shoes had holes. And the grocery list was growing longer than her paycheck. From behind the fryer, someone called out, "Order up!" Marissa passed the food to a bleary-eyed trucker, muttered a polite, "Have a good night," and turned back to her station. She barely had time to catch her breath when Alicia's voice came through. "Can you take the drive-thru? I need to run to the bathroom." "Yeah, I got it," Marissa answered, slipping the headset on. She took a breath, composed her voice. "Welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you tonight?" A tired but clear voice came through the headset. "Hi, can I get a grilled chicken sandwich, a large iced tea, and an apple pie?" "Will that complete your order?" "Yes, thank you." "That'll be 946 in them. Please drive to the first window." A few moments later, the car rolled up, and Marissa froze. A sleek black SUV, behind the wheel, wearing a team warm-up jacket and no makeup, was Caitlin Clark. Yes, that Caitlin Clark, WNBA superstar, basketball icon, a name Marissa's daughter talked about so much it felt like a household word. But tonight, Caitlin didn't look like a celebrity. She looked tired. Her ponytail was messy. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like someone who just needed a break. Marissa tried to stay calm. "Good evening, that'll be 946. Caitlin reached for her bag, checked her jacket pocket, the glove box, then frowned. "Oh no, I think I left my wallet at the arena. I've been running around all day. I'm so sorry, looks like I'll have to head back." She let out a breath, clearly frustrated with herself. "Sorry for wasting your time." Marissa looked at her, not as a millionaire athlete, not as a headline, but as a woman who was tired, hungry, and a little embarrassed. She remembered grocery store lines, digging through her own purse for a few extra dollars. The panic, the shame. Without another thought, she pulled out her own debit card. "It's okay," she said. "I've got it." Caitlin blinked. "Wait, no, you don't have to." "I want to," Marissa replied, smiling. "We all forget things sometimes." She swiped her card. Her balance was already dangerously low. But this wasn't about money. This was about grace. As she packed the order, she made a quiet decision. She added a second apple pie. One more wouldn't break her. "Here you go," she said, handing the bag through the window. "I added another pie. You look like you could use a little sugar after a long day." Caitlin looked at her name tag, then at her face. For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes, like a memory almost surfacing. "Thank you, Marissa," she said softly. "That's really kind of you." "My daughter's a huge fan," Marissa added, still smiling. "Zoe, she's got your poster on her wall." Caitlin grinned, a real tired, grateful smile. "Tell Zoe to keep hooping, and thank you again." She drove away. The brake lights of her SUV disappeared into the dark. Marissa didn't think much of it. She finished her shift, clocked out at midnight, and caught the late bus home. The streets were quiet. Her legs ached, but her heart felt a little lighter. Mrs. Reynolds was asleep on the couch when Marissa arrived. "Kids were angels," she murmured, half awake. Marissa smiled and slipped into their shared bedroom. Zoe had kicked off her blanket. Miguel was hugging a worn teddy bear. She tucked them both in, kissed their foreheads, and whispered, "I'm doing my best, babies. I promise." In the kitchen, she checked all her account, $22.74. She'd just spent nearly $10 on a stranger, but she didn't regret it, not for a second. She had no way of knowing that a security camera had captured the whole thing. that Caitlin Clark would post about her the next day, that the internet would explode with her story. That kindness, simple, quiet kindness, was about to turn her entire life upside down. The next day started like any other. Marissa packed school lunches with what little was left in the fridge, some peanut butter, 2 bananas, and a handful of crackers. She kissed Zoe and Miguel goodbye at the bus stop, promising she'd be home before dinner. Then, at the warehouse where she worked during the day, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text after text, missed calls, notifications piling up. She ignored them at first. Spam, probably. But when her sister Lucia called 3 times in a row, she finally stepped outside on her break and picked up. "Marissa, oh my God, have you seen it?" "Seen what?" she asked, still adjusting to the sunlight. "You're everywhere. Caitlin Clark posted about you." Marissa blinked. "What?" "The video from last night, the one where you paid for her food. Someone leaked the security footage. She posted it with your name. People are calling you the McDonald's angel." Marissa's heart dropped into her stomach. "No, it shows my name tag? Clear as day. And your face, it's gone viral, sis. 3 million views already. Every major sports outlet is picking it up." The rest of her break passed in a daze. By the time she sat down on the bus that evening, Marissa finally pulled up the video on her phone. It was there. Grainy footage, black and white. She watched herself swipe her card, smile, and hand Caitlin the bag. Then came the caption, posted from Caitlin Clark's verified account. "Forgot my wallet after a long day, and this amazing woman at McDonald's didn't even blink. She paid, she smiled. She gave me an extra pie. Thank you, Marissa Lopez. The world needs more people like you." The comments poured in. "She's a real one. Give her a WNBA ticket for life. That's what humanity looks like. McDonald's better promote her ASAP. She used her own money? That's beautiful." Marissa didn't know whether to smile or cry. By the time she arrived at her night shift at McDonald's, a few people were waiting in the parking lot, phones out, filming. "That's her. That's the McDonald's angel." She lowered her head and walked quickly inside. But her manager, Mr. Daniels, was already waiting, arms folded, jaw tight. "Lopez, in my office." Inside the cramped back room, he closed the door behind them and slammed a printed screenshot from the video on the desk. "Explain this." Marissa's hands were cold. "I paid for it myself. It came out of my account." She forgot her wallet. "And the apple pie?" She hesitated. "I added it. I just thought." "You're not paid to think. You're paid to follow policy. No giving away food, even if it's just a pie." She stared at him, her voice quiet. "I didn't give it away. I gave it to her. It wasn't McDonald's pie, it was mine." But it didn't matter. He reached into his drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper and dropped it in front of her. "You're fired, effective immediately." The words hit like a slap. "Mr. Daniels, I've worked here for 3 years. I've never been late, never called in sick. I should have thought about that before making yourself a viral story," he snapped. "Sign." Tears blurred her vision as she scribbled her name. She gathered her things in silence. In the break room, her coworkers looked up as she passed, some sympathetic, some awkward, others just confused. No one said a word. Outside, the small crowd was still there. When they saw her leaving, someone raised a phone. "There she is, the McDonald's angel. Miss Lopez, over here." She pulled her hoodie over her head and kept walking. She didn't feel like an angel. She felt exposed, punished, lost. At the bus stop, she sat on the cold bench and stared at the pavement. How would she pay rent now? How would she buy Miguel new shoes? Or refill Zoe's asthma medication? When she got home, the apartment was quiet. Mrs. Reynolds gave her a knowing look. "Hard day?" Marissa nodded silently. In the living room, Zoe and Miguel were watching a YouTube video. Miguel looked up. "Mama, you're on the internet. We saw the video. You met Caitlin Clark." Zoe hugged her leg. "Are you okay, Mama? You look sad." Marissa knelt down, forced to smile. "I'm just tired, baby." After they were in bed, Marissa sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her inbox was flooded. Hundreds of emails, some encouraging, some invasive. A few asking for interviews, others wanting to donate money. She deleted most of them. Then one message stood out. Subject line, regarding your kindness at McDonald's, CC. The email sat there untouched, glowing quietly in Marissa's inbox. Subject, regarding your kindness at McDonald's, CC. She stared at it for several minutes. Could it really be her? Her thumb hovered over the screen. A voice inside said it was probably fake, a prank, a scam. But something in her gut said no. This was real. She opened it. Hi, Marissa. My name is Tanya Williams. I work with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin was moved by your kindness and would like to meet you. Quietly, privately. No media. If you're available, she'll be at the Green Bean Cafe on Main Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. We hope to see you. Tanya, assistant to Caitlin Clark, Marissa read it 3 times. Then she closed her laptop, set it aside, and said nothing. The next morning, she packed lunches for Zoe and Miguel like she always did. Cereal, half a banana, the last few crackers, then walked them to the bus stop. They waved as the bus pulled away. She stood there a moment longer than usual. Something was shifting. She could feel it, but she didn't know what. She spent the rest of the morning at the public library, someplace quiet, cool, and free. She opened her inbox again. The message was still there. At 12:37 p.m., her fingers typed 2 words. I'll come. At exactly 1:58 p.m., Marissa stepped through the glass doors of the Green Bean Cafe. It smelled like roasted beans, fresh pastries, and quiet hope. She wore the nicest things she owned, a plain blue blouse and slacks she'd ironed twice that morning. She looked around, unsure of where to sit, when a voice called softly from the corner. Marissa? She turned. Caitlin Clark stood up from a small table by the window. She wore a hoodie, joggers, and no makeup. She didn't look like a star athlete, couldn't. She looked normal, warm, nervous even. I'm so glad you came, Caitlin said, smiling. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I, Marissa replied honestly. They sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Caitlin leaned forward and said gently, I wanted to thank you for what you did. You didn't know who I was. You had no reason to help me, but you did. Marissa shrugged lightly. You look tired. I've been there. That's all. It wasn't just that, Caitlin said. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Your name, your face, something about you felt familiar. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photo. Old, faded, creased at the edges. She placed it on the table. Is this your mom? Marissa's breath caught. It was a grainy photo of her mother, Elena Lopez, behind a McDonald's counter, smiling in her work uniform. Where did you get that? I think your mom helped me once, Caitlin said quietly. Years ago, I was just a kid. My family was traveling for a tournament. Money was tight. My mom's card got declined at a McDonald's. The woman behind the counter, your mother, paid for our meal. Marissa's hands trembled slightly, her throat tightened. She said, pay it forward someday. And I never forgot her. I remembered the name, Lopez. The room seemed to still. I don't know what to say, Marissa whispered. You don't have to say anything, Caitlin said. I just wanted you to know that moment stayed with me. That kindness shaped me. And when I saw your name tag last week, I knew it wasn't coincidence. She slid a second envelope across the table. This is for you, not as a favor, but as repayment for what your mom did for me and what you did for me last night. Marissa opened it carefully. Inside was $2,000 in cash. She tried to hand it back. I can't take this. Yes, you can, Caitlin said firmly. It's not charity. It's closure. It's gratitude. It's full circle. Then she added, there's more, if you're willing. From her bag, Caitlin pulled out a third envelope, this one heavier. My foundation is hiring, community engagement, youth events, mentoring programs. We need someone with a heart like yours. Inside was a formal offer letter, a full-time position, a real salary, health benefits for her and her kids, flexible hours, remote work options. Marissa stared at the words. I've never worked at a foundation before. You've worked harder than most people I know, Caitlin said. That's what matters. Skills can be taught, compassion can't. Marissa looked down at the offer. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she let herself feel something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Marissa walked home from the cafe with the offer letter clutched tightly in her purse. Not long ago, she was worried about affording milk. Now, someone had handed her a real job with a livable wage and benefits, and treated it not as a favor, but as something she'd earned. Still, her mind swirled with doubts. Could this really be happening? Was it safe to hope? That night, she tucked Zoe and Miguel into bed like always. Zoe clutched her stuffed bunny. Miguel asked if Caitlin had really smiled at her. Marissa nodded. She smiled at me, and at the memory of your grandmother. After the lights went out, Marissa sat alone at the kitchen table. No noise, no questions, just her and the envelope again. She reread the offer word for word. Full-time, remote flexible, $52,000 a year, health coverage, paid leave, a childcare stipend. Her fingers traced the numbers like they were fragile. She wanted to say yes, but fear held her hostage. What if she failed? What if it disappeared? What if this was all a beautiful mistake? The next morning, she called Tanya, the woman from the email. "This is Marissa Lopez," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'd like to accept the offer." Tanya didn't miss a beat. "That's wonderful news. Welcome to the team." She went on to explain next steps: paperwork, orientation, a laptop and phone couriered to her door. Caitlin's foundation would handle everything. All Marissa had to do was breathe and begin. By the end of the week, she submitted her resignation at the warehouse. It was bittersweet. That job, with its long shifts and sore muscles, had kept her kids fed. It was hard to let go of something that felt like survival. But this was something better. This was a chance. Marissa's first official workday came with butterflies in her stomach. Her kitchen became her new office, cramped but full of hope. She joined virtual meetings, met her new team, introduced herself to Caitlin's operations staff. Everyone welcomed her like she belonged. She couldn't believe it. No one asked for her degree. No one questioned her resume. They listened to her ideas. They wrote down her thoughts. They respected her. By the second week, she was planning her first youth outreach event, a basketball skills clinic for underprivileged girls in East Oakland. Marissa worked late into the evenings, after dinner, after homework, after stories had been read, and little foreheads kissed goodnight. Miguel once peeked into the kitchen and asked, "Mama, are you happy?" She looked up from her laptop, smiled, and said, "Yes, mijo, I think I really am." Caitlin checked in every few days, brief calls or texts, always friendly, always personal. "How are the kids adjusting? You need anything from us? Don't be afraid to ask." Then one afternoon, Tanya reached out again. "Caitlin would like to meet with you again, in person, not work-related, something more personal. She said to tell you it's important." The message was kind but vague. The location? A quiet residence just outside Palo Alto, not Caitlin's public house, a more private space, tucked in the trees. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of Marissa's apartment. A professional driver stepped out, opened the door with a polite smile. "Ms. Lopez, I'll be taking you to see Ms. Clark." Marissa hesitated for a moment, then climbed in. The ride was quiet, smooth. Hills rose around them, tall trees whispering through the windows. She looked out at the winding roads and felt something settle inside her. Not fear, not pressure, just curiosity. And maybe for the first time in years, anticipation. When they arrived, Caitlin was already waiting at the front steps. No cameras, no fans, just a wooden porch and a soft breeze. "Hi, Marissa," she said, stepping forward with a hug. "Come in. I have something to show you." Caitlin led Marissa through the quiet house, modest, sunlit, surrounded by tall trees. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a place that felt lived in, grounded. They entered a cozy sitting room. On a wooden shelf beside a pair of signed basketballs and faded team photos sat a small picture frame. Caitlin picked it up and handed it to Marissa. It was the same photo as before. A younger Elena Lopez, Marissa's mother, smiling from behind a McDonald's counter in a burgundy visor. The print was weathered, but her warmth shone through like it always had. "This has been with me for a long time," Caitlin said quietly. She probably never knew what that moment meant, but I did. Marissa stared at the image, her fingers trembling slightly. She would have never expected anything in return, she said softly. That was just who she was. Caitlin nodded. I know. That's why I wanted to show you something else. She turned and opened a nearby cabinet. Inside were dozens of manila folders, each with a label: youth program proposals, scholarship applications, letters from young athletes' outreach logs, local heroes. Marissa looked at them with curiosity. What is this? The next phase of my foundation, Caitlin replied. I've been working on something called the Elena Project, named after your mom. A program that honors unsung women, like her. Women who don't make headlines, but make a difference. Marissa's eyes filled with tears. You're naming it after her? It felt right, Caitlin said. She changed the direction of my life with one simple act, and you reminded me of that at exactly the right moment. There was silence, thick but not heavy, a silence filled with respect, emotion, and history. I want you to lead it, Caitlin continued. Not just work for the foundation. I want you to run this program, build it, shape it, tell the stories that deserve to be told. Marissa stepped back, overwhelmed. This was more than a promotion, more than a gesture. It was legacy. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Caitlin smiled. You are. You've already lived it. Later that day, after a long, honest conversation about mission and goals and dreams and impact, Marissa agreed. Not out of obligation, not out of gratitude, but out of belief. Belief in her mother, belief in herself. By the time she got home, the sun had dipped below the rooftops. Zoe and Miguel ran to meet her at the door. Did you see Caitlin again? Zoe asked wide-eyed. Marissa knelt down and smiled. I did. And guess what? Something beautiful is happening. And it's named after Grandma. That night, long after the kids were asleep, Marissa sat with her laptop and a mug of tea, drafting the first outline of the Elena Project. Every word came with purpose. She imagined women across the country, nurses, waitresses, caregivers, teachers, grandmothers, being honored for quiet strength and unseen sacrifice. She imagined children hearing their names and believing that being good mattered. That kindness wasn't weakness, it was power. This wasn't just a new job. This was healing. This was justice. This was history. And it had started with a pie, a forgotten wallet, and a heart that said yes. Weeks passed, then months. What began as a moment, a $10 meal and an extra pie, had grown into a movement. The Elena Project launched quietly but beautifully. Its mission, to find and honor women who gave without asking, who built without credit, who gave love when the world gave little back. At first, it was just a small initiative. A few nominations, some local news stories, a single scholarship. But word spread, and the world responded. Letters poured in, emails from strangers, videos from daughters nominating their mothers, communities lifting up the names of janitors, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, nurses, single moms, women like Elena, women like Marissa. Each week, Marissa read their stories, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with tears. She saw pieces of herself in every sentence. She answered every letter she could, wrote grants, planned ceremonies, sat with people who had never been celebrated in their entire lives, and told them, you matter. Zoe and Miguel helped too. Zoe drew pictures for every honoree. Miguel helped pack gift boxes. They didn't fully understand what their mother had created, but they knew it was good. They saw her standing taller. They heard her laugh more freely. They saw her light again. One afternoon, a school in Detroit called. They wanted to host an Elena Project event. Caitlin would be attending. They asked Marissa if she would speak. She almost said no. She hated public speaking. But something inside her said, it's time. When she stood on that stage, she didn't speak like an executive or a celebrity. She spoke like a mother, like a daughter, like a woman who had once been invisible and was now seen. Kindness doesn't trend, she said. It doesn't go viral, not usually, but it changes lives, quietly, deeply, completely. She paused, looked around the room at the rows of young girls watching her. It saved mine, it built this. And it started with one forgotten wallet and a woman at a drive-through window who chose to care anyway. The applause was thunderous, and somewhere in the back of the room, Caitlin stood, hands in her pockets, smiling quietly, watching a story come full circle. Months later, Marissa sat in her small apartment, still the same place. By choice, the walls had more photos now, the fridge was full. The kids were asleep, and on the table sat a single thank you card, handwritten, from a woman in Kansas who had just received a scholarship through the project. It ended with one simple line: "No one ever told me I mattered before. Thank you for changing that." Marissa closed her eyes. She thought of her mother, of that shift at McDonald's, of the pie, of the decision to say yes when she could have just said sorry. And she whispered into the quiet, "We're still paying it forward, Mama. Just like you said." The screen fades to black, the music swells, and all that's left is kindness. The end.